with all the information, all of the data that's out there, we're dealing with a nonlinear environment, changes rapidly, high stakes, inadequate information, who knows where things start and end. Finding the data is not a problem. And you have a great quote here in your book, which is really the vast majority of journals don't even they go unread, which is honestly one of the reasons I'm doing video interviews. Is I had a little pilot that I did, and I asked a question to my peers here in New York City, tell me your favorite book that you read. Nobody could say anything. Well, how about the last 3 years? The truth is, even very seasoned practitioners, because of the way the environment is, they have very little time to actually reflect and to read and to become a learner, an active learner. And so that's why I have moved to a video-based interviewing and learning session.
Yeah.
But can you share with us this evolution of information and how it's affecting situational awareness in the common operating picture?
Yeah, the data overload problem is huge. And as you mentioned, all of us sitting at our offices and our desks, we're dealing with this data overload problem. Just the volume of data that comes to us in our emails every day, and now there's Twitters and blogs and all of these different information sources. We're just overwhelmed with keeping up with it. This is even worse in a real-time operational environment for somebody who has to do really very dynamic decision-making. We've really gained the ability to gather data through a lot of sensors now. We can connect everything with the internet, and it's just this huge data overload problem. And the problem we have is what I call technology-centered design. And that is we've come up with lots of technologies for gathering and transmitting data, and the individual's just overwhelmed with all of this kind of coming at them, and they have to figure out how to prioritize that. And at some point, they almost have to give up because they just can't prioritize and keep up with it all. And we've left it up to the user to sort through everything, try and figure out what they want, integrate it, and that just quickly overloads human capabilities. And that's why in these systems where decision-making is so important, what we really do is we try to do a more user-centered design. And for user-centered design, what that really means is that we integrate the information around the real needs of the user. So instead of having to look in 6 different places to find what I'm looking for and add it all together to figure out what's going on, you want to bring that all together, integrate it in one place. If they need to know the so what of that information, the projections of that information, put that directly on the display. The user shouldn't have to do the mental integration and the mental simulation to figure out what's going to happen. You can actually present that directly on the display, and you can really reduce their workload and dramatically increase their situational awareness at a glance. And we think that's what's really key to improving human decision-making and performance in these environments, is really supporting the user in doing that. And that's what we mean by user-centered design.
You mentioned in your book, and I think I have this for another question, but since you mentioned, I'm going to jump into it, which is, it's not about giving the user what he or she wants. So I think in the book you talk about you have to give the information in such a way that the user then decides what they want to do with that.
So here's what's gone on in some places is they hear the idea of user-centered design, and they think that means let's just ask the users what they want and then we'll give it to them. And that really turns out to be a problematic process. I've seen $6 billion programs sink slowly into the sunset because they go around and around in a circle of what the users say they want, and then you put it up and, well, that's not quite it, and and different users want different things, and it just keeps changing and changing. That turns out not to be very effective, and there's really two reasons for that. One, sometimes users will say, oh, I just want a Band-Aid on what I have. Just fix this, just fix that one little thing. And so they're just kind of trying to put patches on what they've got because that's what they know. The other extreme is you'll get users who want all these far out things that they've seen on a movie somewhere or in sci-fi that sounds cool, but isn't necessarily very effective. And so users are a huge part of this process. I don't want to discount that. It's really important to involve your users, to interview them, and to understand what they need. And there's a difference between what they say they want and what they need. They know what they need. They know the operational realities that they're dealing with. They understand the decisions they're trying to make and the information they need, and they understand how they need to work. And that's hugely important to involve them in that part of the process. But what they don't necessarily understand, though, is how to effectively present that information. They don't necessarily understand where the pitfalls are with many technological systems. And so what looks cool, this 3D rotating display, may actually make their performance much worse. They don't necessarily know that. So the best design approach is where you have the users, You have the human factors engineers who actually understand human performance capabilities and understand effective system design. And you have the software engineers all working together to really create a system. That's the best approach.
It's turned into, I call it the remote control syndrome. You know, we have like 4 remote controls. Each remote control has like, I don't know, 60 different buttons to push on it. It's
Oh yeah, it's horrible. And you know, it takes 20 steps just to turn on your DVD. You know, you can replace all of that with a single integrated controller where I can do what I want in one button press. Today we have that. 10 years ago we didn't have that.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, what we see in the industry, and it's voicing what you're saying, is so many times our softwares, especially in the business continuity management, is just all they do is they keep on adding patches or modules to the software. And so, and of course they want to appease, I'm sure they're appeasing some of the largest clients, but you know, a software company makes money by building something once and then selling it 1,000 times, and that's the model that it's built on. But if you keep on adding things, you know, it gets overwhelming, and it just ends up being a large data repository.
Well, you just end up with, you know, the idea is that more functions are better than fewer functions, and so you just end up with 23 functions and nobody knows how to operate them. You know, and it takes weeks to learn it. Even then, people don't know how to operate it. That's kind of the situation we've got into. And it's because software engineers are very good at developing software. They know how to write code, but they don't necessarily know how to integrate a good interface for effective human performance. And so what a lot of these systems really need is a interface that's been designed around the way people work, around the way they operate, that really makes that an efficient, smooth flow. You can improve human performance 2, 3, 10-fold based on how we design that interface compared to a lot of what today's systems are designed like.